Is the easiest way to accidentally commit a serious crime. This reminds me of the time that a random girl added me on Facebook back when I was 16. I was living on the East Coast and had international friends from when I used to live in a different country, so it was normal for people I didn't know, especially foreign girls, to add me. This particular girl was from Indonesia, a country between India and Australia. She was ethnically Javanese and spoke Malay, which, she taught me through our conversations, was the national language of her country. Her name was Nadia. She was petite, yet her form was well developed. She had accentuated curves that she hid modestly under her baju kurung, a kind of Indian dress. We spoke on and off for quite a while, here and there, for a few months, as she seemed to grow closer and closer to me, becoming more and more clingy and affectionate over our conversations. I thought nothing of it, but kind of understood what was going on. Even though her small, petite form threw me off, she insisted she was 15, which, being only a year younger than myself, put my suspicions at ease. Almost 6 months after we had started talking, an opportunity at my school arose for a school trip abroad. It was a private school, so that's why we had these organized trips pop up every once in a while. I had promised myself that I would save money to participate in the next trip, since I wanted to travel again. You can imagine my shock when the destination country was unveiled: Jakarta, Indonesia. I had already signed up, and even though the coincidence with regards to Nadia was striking, I didn't let it dissuade me, and rather it added some amusement to my excitement for the trip. I thought to myself how I should tell Nadia to meet me somewhere, and impress my classmates with my ability to materialize a cute girl from thin air in a foreign country. When I told Nadia that I would be in Jakarta in a few weeks, she was ecstatic. Immediately, she brought the conversations to another level, insisting heavily at her affection for me and how she wanted us to meet. I accepted, still weary, but she was insistent, and I thought, why not? 2.5 weeks later, and our entire 10th grade class landed in Jakarta, a busy, bustling, dirty, grimy metropolitan hub, full of scooters and busy streets. The teachers, struggling to keep everyone together, brought us to the hotel where we would be staying, and we unpacked our things. On my end, I had told Nadia the details of the place where I would be staying, and she had told me she would be coming by. Once I had landed in Jakarta, Wi-Fi access was difficult to obtain, and so I fell out of contact. That evening, most of us were sitting out on the patio of the hotel as dusk fell and the soft air of the warm night began to smell of roasting meats and petrol exhaust. As we were watching the street in front of us, an old car pulls up in front of the hotel, and a family exits. The father, a thin-looking old man, the mother in a hijab and dress carrying a toddler, a little boy, and out of the back seat came a small but pretty-looking girl, with dark hair and a developed figure restrained by her tight dress. It was Nadia. The first thing she did was run over to me at full speed. I barely had time to stand up and she was already grabbing me and hugging me tightly. I hugged her back as her family walked towards me, smiling, taking my hand, muttering things in Malay and Javanese, as she introduced me to them in thickly accented English. To my surprise, I found them insisting I make my way over to their car. It seems they wanted to take me somewhere. Nadia told me I was to meet more of the extended family. I told my friends, who were still sitting in disbelief at the tables on the patio, to tell the teachers that I was stuck in the bathroom with a dire case of traveler's diarrhea. I wasn't sure when I'd be back, but I'd try to make it before next morning. After this, I turned my back to them, got into the car bundled along with the family, Nadia holding my hand and sitting by my side, and we sped off into the busy late afternoon streets of Jakarta. As we were weaving and turning through the streets, Nadia held me close and then started trying to kiss me in front of her entire family. I was extremely unsure of what to do, but her mother turned around and smiled something through in Malaysian, which Nadia told me was appreciation, so I eventually relented. Her lips felt small and she grinned halfway into the kiss, breaking it off. Eventually we arrived at a large house on the edge of the city. It was much quieter here, and there seemed to be some sort of gathering underway. They parked the car, we all got out, Nadia grinning like a madwoman and clutching me like a drowning man clutches a life jacket. Immediately I was approached by a series of old haggard men and older hijabied women, all grinning at me, shaking my hand and patting my blonde hair. We entered the house and Nadia was separated from me. A conglomerate of men took me to a separate part and gave me traditional Indonesian clothes to change into, all while mumbling things in broken English, Javanese, and Malay. From what I could make out, there was some sort of ceremony happening and I was invited. Eventually, after what must have been an hour of being coached on correct procedure by these old grinning tea-sipping Indonesian men, I was ushered into the main room of the house, which was silent, occupied by a large amount of sitting family members all looking at me as I was walking towards them. As soon as I entered the room, they exploded into clapping. There were 2 people who began beating on a drum and singing, a large lady clutching her hijab threw flower petals over me as I walked down the middle of the crowd. At the front, I saw Nadia, dressed in what looked like a long multicolored robe. I walked to join her, and the crowd quieted down. Next to us was an old imam, a Muslim priest, who recanted words in Arabic from the Quran. These I understood, as I spoke Arabic fluently from my time spent abroad before. There is no God but Allah. Today I bring 2 souls into union. I finally understood what was happening. Before I had time to react, the crowd was cheering once more and Nadia, grinning, barely able to contain her excitement, grabbed me and we kissed awkwardly in front of everyone. What happened afterwards was a blur. We were swarmed by the crowd, a flower petal got into my eye, and I blinked rapidly, trying to see in front of me. I could feel me and Nadia being ushered, guided around, guided by the crowd. Eventually, After what felt like an eternity of being submerged in the frenzied, excited mob, Nadia took my hand. We were ushered through a large set of doors, and they closed behind us, engulfing us in sudden silence. The room was a large bedroom. The window opened slightly to let the cool night air seep through a mosquito nest. The bed seemed to have been perfectly arranged for us. The sheets parted just so. Nadia now took me to the bed and tried to kiss me again as my shock of disbelief had just begun to wear off. I asked what had happened, and she told me enthusiastically that we were now husband and wife, forever together. Between kisses I managed to ask her again how old she was, saying that I can't believe her family had let her marry so young. She reiterated her age, firmly telling me she was 15. 15, she yelled, but she wasn't serious or angry, and she devolved into giggling as we kissed again. I'd like to say that I managed to have a bigger clarity of the mind, and that I ran out of the window to run all the way back to my hotel. I'd like to say that I stopped to collect my bearings. However, her progressive disrobing distracted my young teenage mind enough to force such concerns away for the time being. Before I knew it, she was removing the fabric that separated her intimacy and curves from my touch, and... well, I'll let you imagine what happened. I tried to resist valiantly, but alas, my young hormones won over, and a few minutes later she had disrobed from me before giving me the gift of her innocence. The entire night passed and neither I or her saw a wink of sleep, but come morning I thought I had no sperm left in me for the rest of my life, and when the sun began to shine through the same window I remarked on when entering, both of us were utterly exhausted. Nadia was asleep, head on my chest. As I lay on the bed, contemplating my situation, what was I supposed to do? Nadia woke up, and after another moment of intimacy she went to the bathroom for a shower, and during the moment I found myself alone I did what had to be done. I dressed myself, wrote her a regretful note, I opened the window, removed the mosquito netting, crawled out and jumped to the ground outside the house, and ran away at full speed down the road until I reached a highway, basked in the early morning dust of outer Jakarta. Confused by the noise, I walked around, following the overpass, while being stared at by everyone who approached me, a tired disheveled white kid walking around God knows where. Eventually, I did manage to arrive safe and sound at the hotel, where, coincidentally, my classmates and friends were waking up and taking the first breakfast. Ignoring the barrage of questions from everyone, I stumbled straight to my bed, where I slept for 10 hours, only waking once the sun had gone down. For some odd reason, the teachers had been oblivious and hadn't seen my absence. A few days later we flew out of the city unmolested, and, when I arrived back home, I checked my Facebook only to find that she had disconnected herself out of grief, believing me to have been kidnapped. I later learned from her friend that my suspicions had been correct. She wasn't 15, but much younger. What is the easiest way to accidentally commit a